Good morning, middle school. It is a virtual week, so we are going to run through the second week of No Matter What, the series we're working on right now. And there are no slides for this, so we just have this really pretty candy screen. That'll be it. And we are building up for Easter. So Easter is coming up, and we are talking about the Easter story and kind of trying to take it in a different light. So this is week two. To start week two, I want to tell a story. It's a beautiful story of when I was in eighth grade. And in eighth grade, I played AAU basketball. So I would play basketball, and then during volleyball season, I was playing basketball and volleyball. And I was like sometimes a point guard, so kind of a big deal. Got the ball a lot. And it was almost halftime, and we were losing a game. And I got the ball. I was dribbling up the court. There were about 2 seconds left. So basically, time for a Hail Mary shot. Buzzer was ticking down. I yanked my arm back, chucked the basketball like a baseball towards the basket. Not a hope in the world that it would go in. And it did. Buzzer hits when it's in the air, sinks through the net. Beautiful shot. Everyone was amazed. I felt like the coolest person in the world. After the game, which we lost, by the way, there was a girl from a different team who came and told me how great that shot was. Like, that's how cool I was that opponents were telling me that I made a great shot. So, kind of a big deal. Felt a little bit like I was on top of the world. So my question then, have you ever been there, right? Where like, people around you know that you're important. They know that you're super cool. You're just like on top of the world. You were seen, you were noticed. People from all around saw what you did. You're really valued. Um, Maybe, you had a post on social media that a lot of people liked, or a comment on something where people were like, oh, yeah. Or you gave an answer in school and everyone was like, how did you get that? You're so smart. Or, you get a part in a school play, whatever it might be. If you've ever had that feeling, you know how good it feels to be seen and to be seen as important as someone else. But if we're honest, I think we'd all say that there are times and there are places in our lives where we don't really feel that important. And that feeling is not so awesome. So maybe you're not the best player on your team. Or maybe you don't really understand math and everybody else seems to get it. Maybe you feel a little bit like an outsider at school, or um, just kind of anything, just that feeling. And it makes us feel that we're not important or we're not that valued. And that's a really yucky feeling. The reality is that most of us probably at some time or another feel like we're unknown or we're unimportant. And you wonder if anyone notices you, or, at school or church or home, wherever it might be. And we're lucky if we can feel important every now and then, right? We have that awesome game winning shot, but, well, it wasn't a game winning shot, but buzzer beating shot, right? Um, so if you've ever had that feeling where like you just don't feel seen, um, I'm really glad that you're in this group, right? And that you're listening to this because our hope is that, through the years, as we're seeing you every day, we get to know you, we get to know who you are, and we can help you feel important and special no matter what. Because we love you and we see how valuable you are and all the talents you have. So that first of all. But second of all, I want to tell you another story about someone who probably felt just like that, where they felt like they weren't seen, they felt like they didn't have a lot of value, or they weren't that important. And what's really neat is that through the Easter story, it actually shows that all of us can feel really important because we're all important to the one who is the most important, right? And that's Jesus. So, throughout the story or throughout this series, we're talking about different people who were impacted by Jesus and played a part in the Easter story. So, today we're going to be talking about someone named Mary. And when you hear the name Mary, you may immediately think about Mary, the mother of Jesus, or you might have heard of a story where there's this guy named Lazarus and then his sisters Mary and Martha. And those are both like really important women, great stories. And the Mary that we're going to talk about today She might not have been the most well known Mary, but what we're about to learn about her and her life is powerful. This Mary was from a small fishing village called Magdala. Ugh, I can speak. So she was known as Mary Magdalene. And it's actually a pretty big deal that we can talk about any of the Marys today because at the time when Jesus was, doing his ministry, women didn't really have a lot of rights. They didn't have a lot of freedoms. They didn't have the opportunities that men had. And so it's really amazing when we're reading the Bible that we see these stories of women, and we see how influential and powerful their lives were. So it's very interesting and cool that these stories are even written down. Um, so in the culture that Jesus was doing his ministry in, this culture that gave women less rights and less leadership, less opportunities, Jesus actually went out of his way to value women and give them opportunities. So we know that during Jesus' life and his ministry, he was actually very close to Mary Magdalene. He knew her by name, he saw her as important. And we know this because Jesus' friends, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, recorded the story of Jesus' ministry in the Bible. So we can see throughout those stories where Mary pops up. Because Jesus was close to Mary Magdalene, she's included in the story that we read every year at Easter. She is part of the event that really shaped the Christian faith. So we're going to take a look at it. So we're actually going to go to John 20. So if you want to flip in your Bibles to John 20, John will be one of the first books of the New Testament. I can't project the verse because I don't have the slide for it. So John 20 is where we're going to be reading. You can pause me, find it, and then you can unpause me. So John 20, we're going to do verses 11 through 13. And what that says is Mary was standing outside the tomb crying. So this is after Jesus' death. He's been laid to rest in the tomb. And as she wept, she stopped and looked in. She saw two white robed angels, one sitting at the head and the other at the foot of the place where the body of Jesus had been lying. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" the angels asked her. "Because they've taken away my Lord," she replied, "and I don't know where they have put him." So again, Jesus has just been killed. He was crucified on a cross, which was horrible public death. And Mary Magdalene witnessed it. She was there, she saw it. And then Jesus got buried in a tomb. And because Mary cared so much about Jesus, Mary went to visit Jesus' grave. And what she found was that the tomb was empty. And so she immediately, her mind goes to someone must have taken away his body. And thinking that, she was just so hurt and so distraught about it. And then we learn that Mary actually gets visited by two angels and they wanted to know why she was so sad, right? Angels, that's amazing. What a moment here. And something happened that totally took Mary by surprise. And it changed things, not just for her, but for all of us who believe in Jesus today. So the story continues in John 20, verses 14 through 16. She turned to leave and saw someone standing there. It was Jesus, but she didn't recognize him. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" Jesus asked her. "Who are you looking for?" She thought he was the gardener. "Sir," she said, "if you have taken him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will go and get him." "Mary," Jesus said. She turned to him and cried out, "Rabboni," which is Hebrew for teacher. So Mary's weeping over the death of her friend and her teacher, and another person appears. And so she's thinking Jesus is dead. So she didn't at first recognize that it was Jesus. And she saw him die pretty horrifically and gruesome. So she didn't recognize him at first, but then Jesus used Mary's name. He wanted her to know that it was him and that he knew her and that he saw her. And when he spoke her name, she immediately recognized him. And of course, she was still in shock, right? Jesus had just risen from the dead. That's what we actually saw. That's what we are celebrating at Easter, this resurrection. And to resurrect something means to bring it back to life. So at Easter, we remember when Jesus died on a cross and was buried in a tomb. And when we celebrate the fact that he walked out of the tomb 3 days later, in other words, we're saying he came back to life, which is what we call the resurrection. See, Jesus' resurrection is so important because of his resurrection. We can trust that God is who he says he is. And when we look at Jesus' ministry, Jesus spent years telling his followers that this was going to happen, that he would die and come back to life. And then it actually happened. And it was all true. Everything that he said was true. And because of that, we can believe all the other things that Jesus promised are true as well. We can walk confidently knowing that we can be close to God. Jesus made that possible for us for eternity through the resurrection. And that's what makes Easter so important. And one of the reasons that we know this important thing happened is because Mary was there to see him. She witnessed it with her own eyes and she followed through on an important task. So, the next couple of verses, it says, "Don't cling to me," Jesus said, "for I haven't yet ascended to the Father. But go find my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene found the disciples and told them, "I've seen the Lord." Then she gave them his message. Mary was the first person to witness the resurrection. She was the very first person that he wanted to share the that he wanted to go and share the news with his closest friends. And I really love how that passage ends. She gives them his message. And talk about an important job, right? Mary believed, she knew what Jesus' resurrection meant, and she said yes to sharing the message with the rest of his followers. She's one of the reasons that we have a record of these moments still today. And that makes her such an important piece of this story. This most important event in our faith is Jesus' resurrection. So maybe, in your life you felt unimportant. I'm sure Mary did, in her life, she was a woman in a culture that did not value women and didn't give them any rights or respect them. So Mary felt unimportant. Um, and so maybe you feel the same way. You feel like people don't understand you. Maybe you think God would never choose to love you. But I can assure you, what we celebrate every year with Easter proves that you're not only important, but you're important to God. He sent his son to die for you and then to come back to life so that you can be with God forever. And he did that because of how much he loves you. He did that because your life is important to him. So, what I want you to remember really from this is that Easter reminds us that we are important no matter what. God chose somebody like Mary Magdalene to help spread the word about the resurrection. He chose her to be an important part of his story, even in a society that would have looked down on her. And what's really cool is the same thing can be true for us. God didn't just send Jesus to die for those people back then. His resurrection wasn't just for people back then. He did it for us. He did it for all of us. And no matter how other people see us and no matter how we feel, the resurrection really proves that we're loved and we're seen, we're chosen, and that we have value. Easter reminds us that we are important no matter what. And so, how do we begin to believe that? So, first of all, I think it's important that we need to think about how we see ourselves. Do you believe that you are important to God and to those around you and even to yourself? Do you talk down to yourself? Do you have self doubt and negative thoughts about who you are, how others must see you? Um, do you think you deserve to be treated poorly? Any of those things? Because you got to get honest with yourself and think about the way that you feel about yourself. Ask God to remind you this Easter that He loves you so much and that you are seen, known, and valued, and that you don't deserve to talk down to yourself, those negative thoughts, that you are so important. And it's so important that Jesus sent His only Son to live a perfect life and die for you. And you are important in His eyes. And then the next thing I want you to think about is think about how you treat others, right? One of the most important things with Easter is that we can show Jesus' love to others, and we can start by treating others with the same value that Jesus treats them with. Jesus came to die for you because he loves you, but he also came for the people around you because he loves them. So we can show people that no matter who they are, that they are important to us because we can listen to them. We can invite them to be part of our groups, join in our games. We can stand up for them if we see any bullying, if we see them being mistreated. We can learn about people who might be different than us, have different beliefs. We can just show them that they are valuable and important. Doing that not only shows them that we care, but it gives them a glimpse of God's love working through us, and it shows them just how important they are. So, overall, it's important to remember that Easter reminds us that we are important no matter what, And one of the best places to practice living this out is just, here at church with our friends, as we're talking, and we're discussing things. That's a great way to practice this and understand that we see you as so important and that we love and value you. And that you can then show that to your friends and your family and all of that. So, heading to your small group, one of the questions you can think about is what makes the resurrection so important to you? There will be some questions in the details below. And you are welcome to, journal through those, or you can discuss those with a family member. And then we will be back next week. So have a wonderful week. And yeah, we'll see you for Bible study on Tuesday. Bye, guys.